My old buddy who drives freight trucks took on a job delivering a Buddha head. Even though he got it there safe and sound, he's been burning up with fever and plagued by nightmares ever since. When I got the call and rushed to the hospital, he was already delirious. His burning hot hand clutched mine tightly. "Adam, my Buddha head got stolen. I lost it." "Kyle, you delivered it. It's safe. You didn't lose anything." His wife and mother were crying beside him, but no matter what anyone said, he kept insisting the Buddha head was gone. The guy was practically on his last breath. I turned to Kyle's boss and said, "Where's the Buddha body? I'll deliver it." Kyle used to work for me. Honest, hardworking, and simple everything he knew about trucking. I taught him. Later, I got screwed over by my business partner and the company went bankrupt. Kyle wanted to stick with me, but I kicked him out. He had a wife, a kid, and aging parents. I couldn't drag him down with me. But even as I spent the last couple years buried in debt, Kyle and I never lost touch. Anytime my family needed a hand, he was the first one to show up. Kyle's current boss, John, was also an old acquaintance. When he heard I was willing to take over the job, he looked visibly relieved. "Adam, if you're willing to do this run, I'll cover the gas. Whatever we get paid, it's all yours." Kyle's wife pulled me aside in the hospital hallway. "Adam, there's something off about Kyle's illness. When they left, they were transporting both the Buddha head and body together, but in the end, only Kyle made it back." I frowned. I mean, John's been in the trucking game as long as I have. How could he not know the rules for transporting Buddha statues? For these segmented statues, no matter how many trucks you use, they all have to depart and arrive at the same time. The schedule's calculated to the minute. Even restroom breaks have to be synchronized. Any delay or solo action is taboo. When John called to say the Buddha head had arrived but the body hadn't, I already thought something was fishy. I just figured maybe the temple had some special request. Kyle's wife wiped her tears and went on, "Kyle was acting weird the night he came back. I asked him what was wrong and he said he'd scraped the front of the truck during the trip, but it wasn't a big deal. I told him to rest, but that night, he started burning up and rambling in his sleep. It's been 2 days since we got him here, and the doctors still can't figure out what's wrong. I'm guessing no one else dares take the Buddha body now, and that's why John gave you a call." Kyle's wife was always straightforward. "Back when my own wife was hospitalized, she often helped me care for her." "I get it," I told her. "You don't need to worry. Transporting a Buddha might come with all kinds of taboos, but it's also considered a blessed task. Kyle's always been respectful. Once I get that Buddha body delivered, I'll light incense for him. The Buddha will look after him." Kyle's wife nodded through red, swollen eyes. After leaving the hospital, I went straight to John's company with him. On the way, John came clean. The guy who was supposed to deliver the Buddha body with Kyle was named Carlos, a relative from John's hometown. He'd only been training for 6 months, but kept pestering to hit the road and make money. This job was short distance, high paying, and since Kyle would be with him, John figured it was safe and let him go. No one expected Carlos to snap halfway through the trip. He called John demanding more money. John had been drinking and wasn't in the mood, so he cursed him out over the phone. Next thing anyone knew, Carlos turned the truck around and brought the Buddha body back. That's the worst thing you can do when transporting a Buddha going back the way you came is absolutely forbidden. Even after delivering the statue, you're supposed to drive back empty. But to only bring the body back, John sobered up instantly. Kyle didn't realize the other truck was missing until he was well down the road. By the time he found out what Carlos had done, it was too late to stop him. All he could do was grit his teeth and deliver the Buddha head alone. Who knows what else happened on the road, Kyle, who's always the safest driver I know, somehow managed to scrape his truck. When we arrived at John's company, the place was a madhouse. A bunch of drivers were restraining a tall young guy. "Carlos, knock it off. This isn't something you can fix right now. Wait till John gets back. It's just a delivery. What's the big deal?" The second John saw him, his temper exploded. He stormed over, shouting, "Carlos! You've got some nerve showing your face here! Didn't I tell you to get lost? Who let you in?" "Why shouldn't I come? I didn't wreck the truck. I'll just do the delivery again, problem solved. Besides, my mom told me to come back. She's gonna call you later." Must have been some elder from the family, because John's face darkened instantly. I followed him through the gate of the company. A few of the older workers recognized me. "Hey, Adam's here," said Cole, who I was closest with. He rushed to grab me a chair. I waved him off. "Show me the truck." Cole froze for a moment, then realized what I meant. "You're taking the job? That's great news." We were just racking our brains here. Cole quickly led me to the back lot, and John hurried along with us. Carlos and a few others trailed behind. I could hear Carlos muttering, "Who the hell is he? Why does he get to go and I don't?" "You don't know Adam Anderson? He's been doing this for over 10 years. Used to specialize in warding off bad energy during transports. Nothing freaks him out." "Tah, what kind of freaky stuff could there be? It's all just for money." "Shut up," John snapped at him. As soon as we entered the lot, I saw the truck meant for the Buddha body. Because the statue is massive and some roads have height restrictions, it has to be delivered in pieces and assembled on site. The body was split into upper and lower halves, each wrapped in red cloth and carefully placed on the truck. You can't tie down a Buddha statue with chains, only use anti-slip mats and foam cushions, so the truck was packed to the brim. Even the outside was decorated with red fabric, and the truck itself had clearly just been washed. "Adam, take a look. Is there anything missing? If so, I'll go get it." "Just like we said, my dime. Your profit," Carlos immediately protested. "Why the hell is that? It's my truck. Why should he get all the money?" He lunged forward, trying to climb up first. Too bad for him. Even though he's tall, he's still a full head shorter than me. I grabbed him by the collar and yanked him back down. "Get the hell off my truck! Since when is it yours?" John rolled up his sleeves, ready to throw down, but I held him back. "Enough," I said, turning to Carlos, who still looked pissed. "You already started the run. Why'd you suddenly ask for more money? If the cut wasn't fair, why not speak up before departure?" "I didn't know before," Carlos grumbled, clearly feeling wronged. "We're family. My mom even asked him to look after me, but he gave the others way more than he offered me. I wasn't about to work for free. That's just bullying." "Bullshit. You've only been doing this 6 months. I gave you more than enough," John snapped, his face red with anger. I frowned. "Who told you your cut was lower than everyone else's? You left in the morning, arrived by evening, even had a lunch break. You were alone, in the truck. I heard it at the rest stop, in the bathroom," Carlos said self-righteously. "Someone said I had the lowest commission, that I was working for free. If it were him, he would have quit already." "That shut everyone up," Cole stammered. You serious? That rest stop's full of travelers from all over. How would anyone know our company's pay rates? Even other drivers wouldn't know the details." "Who exactly said it? Did you see their face?" "Nope," Carlos replied, unfazed. "It was when I was in the bathroom. The guy was in the next stall. His voice was right in my ear. I heard every word clear as day." Cole's face went pale. He didn't dare ask again. Someone else chimed in. "Could it have been Kyle? Weren't they on the road together?" "Kyle's voice. You think he wouldn't recognize it? Besides, Why would Kyle make up crap like that? Another guy shot back. John glanced at me, hesitant. Adam, maybe we should call the temple and see if we can push it a couple days. I shook my head. I'm going home for a quick shower. Then I'm heading out tonight. Kyle's still in the hospital, worrying about the Buddha head. I need to see this through. But you'll be driving through the night, John protested. There's no rule against that when transporting a Buddha. Just hang 2 yellow silk lanterns, I replied, looking up at the statue on the truck. Besides, this is life and death. The Buddha will protect us. In the end, I had John prepare a bundle of incense and a bowl of 7-colored rice. Not something used often, but my old master always made me carry it on Buddha runs. John decided Cole would go with me. Cole was nervous, but didn't say no. I glanced at Carlos, who still looked confused and fuming. I decided to bring him along too. After all, he was the one who brought the Buddha body back. At exactly 7 p.m., the 3 of us set off. 2 small yellow silk lanterns dangled beneath the side mirrors. They used to burn temple candles inside them, but now it's just battery-powered bulbs. They barely glowed, looked like 2 fireflies from a distance. Cole took the first shift behind the wheel. I lay down in the back to rest, and Carlos sat up front. Maybe he thought I was asleep, because Carlos lowered his voice and muttered, "Uncle John's really giving him the full payment?" Then we came along for nothing. Cole sighed and replied, "You think the boss is gonna nickel and dime us? Be thankful Adam took this job otherwise. We'd be screwed right now." Carlos scoffed. "So what if he's done a few cleansing runs?" "Big deal. Cleansing is just about having an experienced driver test out a new route to avoid bad luck. Anyone with some mileage can do that. I heard his company went under after he got screwed. And now he's scrambling to pay off debt doing odd jobs. And you guys still call him Adam, like he's some hero." Cole shot Carlos a cold glare in the rearview mirror. "You know that guy who screwed him over? Died on his very first cleansing run. Adam was the one who ended up clearing that route." Carlos went silent, caught off guard, not sure how to respond. But judging from his face, he still didn't buy it. Cole could only shake his head in frustration. I lay in the back seat and must have dozed off without realizing it. In my dream, I was walking alone on an empty highway. No cars, no people, just silence all around. I kept walking forward, the only sound my footsteps until, at some point, another set of footsteps echoed behind mine. I spun around suddenly and saw a man standing just outside the guardrail. Half of his face was twisted. He stared straight at me, one leg lifted like he was trying to cross the barrier. But he couldn't. I recognized him. It was Larry, the very guy who betrayed me. My childhood friend. "Adam, I won't let you off easy." His dry, raspy voice rang out. He was stuck on that highway forever. "You can't cross over," I said coldly, staring at him. "Is that so?" He glared back at me, then suddenly stretched his mouth wide, exposing blood-red gums. His neck elongated like a snake, lunging past the guardrail straight at me. My hand instinctively reached for my waist and clutched something cold and hard. It stabbed into my palm. I snapped awake. The nightmare faded like a receding tide. The gently swaying roof of the truck came into view. My hand was still gripping the soul whip tied to my waist. I got it from a crazy old Taoist when I was a kid. I saved him from a ditch when I was 12. Back then, he looked me over and said, "A face of wrath, a heart of mercy. You're destined to make a living walking the line between worlds." I didn't think much of it then. Hit the road as a trucker when I turned 18. Turns out, he was right. Cleansing runs, soul whip to ward off spirits now well into my 30s, I'm still paying my debts with ghost-hauling gigs. Still, dreaming about Larry caught me off guard. He's been dead for almost 6 months now. "Adam, you awake?" Cole asked from the driver's seat. I quickly answered and sat up. It was past 10 at night. The traffic outside had noticeably thinned. We're almost at the service area, right? I'll take over driving, I told Cole. He nodded, lifted his hand to grab a cigarette, but couldn't hold it steady. That's when I noticed his hand was trembling. What's wrong? I asked. Cole hesitated, voice shaky. Adam, why are there so many people trying to flag us down tonight? I leaned toward the window and looked out. On the roadside, every 10 or so meters, stood a figure. They didn't try to stop sedans or buses, only when we approached did they slowly raise a hand. This wasn't a highway, so there were fewer cars and poor lighting. Most of the figures stood just outside the guardrail, their faces hidden in shadow. Ignore them. Just keep the truck steady. Once we hit the service area, we're good, I told Cole. Cole gripped the steering wheel tighter, not daring to relax. Just then, Carlos, who had dozed off earlier, woke up, groggily looking out the window. Damn, why are there so many people out here? Is there some tourist spot nearby? Cole and I didn't answer. We stayed focused on the road. Carlos stared outside quietly for a while, then suddenly reached for the door. My soul whip at my waist gave a jolt. Carlos had already opened the door. I grabbed his shoulder and yanked him back hard. The door slammed shut with a bang. Carlos twisted his neck toward me, eyes locked and dazed. "Let them in," he whispered. Cole shrieked in fear, causing the truck to skid. "Keep your hands on the wheel!" I shouted, then dragged Carlos into the back seat by the collar. Carlos let out a low growl, reached out, and started choking me. I pinned him against the seat and whipped out the soul whip, landing a solid strike across his hands. Carlos screamed and clutched his swollen hand, collapsing onto the seat. I climbed into the front passenger seat and looked out the window. It was as if a layer of dust covered the glass. I could barely see the road. Gripping the soul whip, I knocked twice on the window. Instantly, the dust outside dispersed. The truck zoomed past another figure trying to flag us down. In the rearview mirror, I saw the person's stiff head slowly turn, eyes seemingly glued to our vehicle. Cole pulled out some tissues and wiped the sweat from his face. Carlos was still slumped in the back, quietly sobbing with barely a sound. I turned on the radio, looking for something to listen to. It landed on a storytelling segment, Journey to the West, but the narrator's voice sounded odd, like someone was squeezing his throat thin and sharp. Now then, Sun Wukong was trapped beneath Five Finger Mountain for 500 years, until one day, Cole suddenly screamed. The truck jolted violently, as if we'd run something over. Adam, I think I hit someone. He reached for the brakes, but I smacked his hand away. A nearby SUV nearly rear-ended us, swerving at the last second and blasting its horn. Are you nuts? There's no one there! The road behind was spotless. I'd been watching the whole time, no one in the middle of the road. Cole was gasping for air, hands trembling on the wheel. Just as he began to relax, the truck thumped again. Adam, it's fine. Calm down. I put a hand on his shoulder. We're almost at the service area. Once we're there, we'll switch. Cole nodded frantically, sweat pouring down and soaking the front of his shirt. Carlos climbed back up, huddled like a frightened quail, gripping the safety handle tightly. The Journey to the West broadcast kept going, the narrator's voice shriller than ever. Let's talk about the holy monk from the eastern lands, Golden Cicada reborn. 10 lifetimes of merit to his name. His westward journey drew the eyes of many demons, the envy of all ghosts. We finally reached the service area. Strangely, the roadside figures were nowhere to be seen anymore. It had just passed midnight. The lot was lit up by floodlights, bathing everything in white light that made us feel a little safer. The three of us got out of the truck. Cole and Carlos could barely stand, their legs were shaking. I told them to get some food and use the restroom while I stayed by the truck. Once they left, I walked around the vehicle. Nothing seemed out of place, no dents, no scratches, except for a cluster of messy black smudges on the rear guardrail. Some looked like handprints, others like claw marks, twisted and menacing under the light. I grabbed a white towel from the cab, dampened it, and wiped them all off. The Buddha statue was still covered in red cloth, seated upright on the truck, just as before. "Hey, man, delivering a Buddha this late at night?" someone said behind me. I turned and saw 2 or 3 workers in blue uniforms. "Yeah, night trip. Trying to arrive by morning." "That's rough. We're cooking noodles over here. Come grab a bite." Their truck was parked diagonally across from ours. They had a little electric pot steaming with noodles beside it. The smell drifted over. I shook my head. "No thanks. Our guys are already out getting food." Just as I spoke, Cole suddenly emerged from behind their truck, waving at me. "Adam, the food stalls are closed. Let's just eat with them." The workers smiled too. "Far from home. Gotta stick together. Come share a bite." I frowned and looked in Cole's direction. He was holding a bowl, staring into it like he couldn't wait for the noodles, not a trace of fear left on his face. "No thanks. You guys eat. I'm not hungry," I said, wiping the truck with the towel again. But the workers didn't move. They just stood behind me. When I finally stopped and turned around, they suddenly sprang into motion, laughing and shouting as they returned to their pot of noodles like nothing happened. After I finished wiping the truck, I sat on the step next to the door. That's when I realized how unnaturally quiet it was. The service area seemed deserted. Even though the parking lot was bright with floodlights, the buildings nearby were mostly dark inside. The surrounding vehicles were sparse, and on closer inspection, they all seemed covered in a layer of dust. Over there, Cole was happily slurping down bowl after bowl of noodles, eating non-stop, but Carlos was nowhere to be seen. He was supposed to be with Cole. Just as I was thinking that, a figure suddenly stumbled out from the roadside. It was Carlos. His face was pale as a sheet, and he staggered over to me. "Adam, Cole's gone." I almost didn't make it back. If I hadn't seen the yellow lanterns on our truck from far away, I would have gotten lost outside the restroom. Carlos was clearly terrified. Before I could say anything, he blurted out, "Something's off here, bro! I just went to the restroom, but it was pitch black, falling apart everywhere." I'm telling you, this isn't the same service area we stopped at before we went to the wrong place. I clamped a hand over his mouth and motioned for him to look behind him. Diagonally across from us, Cole was still wolfing down noodles. Next to him, the men in blue uniforms were standing perfectly still, staring straight at us. The truck behind them didn't look the same anymore. Its body was covered in rust, and the windows were shattered. Carlos's legs buckled and he almost collapsed. I grabbed his arm and whispered, "Go over there and bring Cole back. Tell him we're heading out. If he won't come, drag him back." Carlos's voice cracked as he nearly sobbed. "Bro, I'm scared. I can't do it." "Go." I gave him a push, and Carlos forced himself to go. I drew the soul whip from my waist and slowly stood up. That's when the floodlights illuminating the lot began to flicker. Carlos screamed, and panic, overriding fear, bolted toward Cole and yanked him up to run. I leapt into the truck and fired up the engine just before the lights went completely out. I flipped on the headlights. At least we could see the road now. The workers and their truck were gone. Carlos came tearing back, screaming the whole way, dragging Cole behind him. Cole's eyes were glazed, drool streaming from his mouth. I reached over and hauled Cole into the truck. Carlos climbed in behind him. Just as he tried to shut the door, he let out another scream. It wouldn't close. Something was caught in it. A hand. "Forget it! You both get in the back," I snapped. The front seat was too cramped, and I couldn't swing the sole whip properly. Luckily, Carlos found a burst of strength. He grabbed Cole by the waistband and, with brute force, shoved both of them into the back seat. I lashed out hard at the pale hand with the whip and slammed the door shut. A furious pounding immediately started on the door. Someone outside yelled, "Open up! Let me in! I'm not on the truck yet! Open up!" The voice sounded eerily like Cole's. Carlos began to shake, and the way he looked at Cole shifted with dread. I slammed my foot on the gas, and only then did the voice vanish. As the truck sped away, we realized that this place wasn't an operating service area at all. It was an abandoned parking lot. I made a U-turn and headed for the exit. In the back seat, Cole began to convulse again, his stomach heaving like he was about to vomit, but nothing came up. "Do you have any alcohol in the truck?" I glanced in the rear view and saw that Cole's face was turning blue. If he didn't throw up soon, we'd be in real trouble. Carlos was so scared his teeth were chattering. After a moment, he stammered, "Alcohol? Yeah. Find it. Make him drink it. Give him a bag, too. He needs to throw up." Okay. Carlos frantically fumbled around under the back seat and pulled out 2 bottles of Ergo-2. Drinking and driving is illegal, of course, but every trucker keeps some hard liquor on hand, dangerous in the wrong moment, life-saving in the right one. Cole chugged down 2 bottles and finally started vomiting. Thick, retching sounds filled the cab as we got back on the road. That abandoned lot was far behind us now, pitch black and eerily silent. As we drove out, I scanned the surroundings carefully. Most of the vehicles parked there were clearly wrecks, dented and smashed up. When we drove in, it had looked bright and bustling. Now, it looked nothing like a service area. After throwing up, Cole collapsed on the back seat, half conscious, his face less pale than before. What he vomited was a thick, black sludge that stank to high heaven. We had to drive with the windows open for a long while just to breathe properly again. I drove for over an hour more. No more strange hitchhikers, no more weirdness. Carlos stayed curled up quietly. Maybe the silence got to him, because he finally asked, cautiously, "Adam, when you used to do these jobs, did you ever run into stuff like this?" "No," I said flatly. "I've never done a Buddha delivery that only involved the body." Carlos looked stung, his head hanging low. After a long pause, he muttered, "Do you think that voice in the restroom had talked to me on purpose?" I couldn't give him a straight answer. All I could say was, "Next time, think before you act. In this line of work, being reckless can get you killed." Carlos nodded and shrank back into the seat, curling up. Up ahead, there seemed to be a car accident. 2 small cars had collided and were now blocking the road. "What the hell? We can't get through?" Carlos sounded like he wanted to floor it and be done with this nightmare. The dark road gave him no sense of safety. Fortunately, a few traffic cops in yellow vests were waving us down at the roadside. I pulled over and rolled down the window. "The road needs to be cleared. You can't pass just yet," one of them said, walking up to my door. "Thanks for your work, officer." "Any idea how long?" I asked. 10 minutes or so. We're almost done," he replied. Just then, another officer approached. "What are you hauling?" "A Buddha statue. Delivery to a temple up ahead," I said, pulling out the contract. He barely glanced at it before walking to the back of the truck. "We need to inspect the cargo. Please cooperate." Something about their tone felt off. There was still an accident to deal with, after all. But random inspections happen often on the road, so I reached for the door handle to step out. Just before I opened it, I glanced instinctively at the rearview mirror. The yellow silk lantern still hung beneath it, its faint light glowing more brightly than usual. In the mirror, I could see the upper half of the officer walking to the back of the truck, but he wasn't wearing a yellow vest in the reflection. He was dressed in a blue uniform, just like those workers at the parking lot. I immediately locked the doors. When I looked outside again, I saw that none of the officers were wearing proper uniforms. No police insignia. Their armbands were just random patches of matching colors. And the two small cars weren't recently wrecked at all. They looked like old, totaled junkers. "Hey, get out of the truck and cooperate." The one by my door barked, pounding hard on the window. I gave him a cold stare and reached for the ignition. He saw what I was doing and, in a sudden burst of rage, climbed up onto the window, trying to squeeze inside. As soon as his face breached the cabin, it turned charred black. Carlos, who had been watching quietly, screamed in terror. Even dazed, Cole woke with a jolt. I whipped out the soul whip and cracked it straight down on the thing's head. It shrieked and tumbled from the window. I fired up the engine and turned the wheel, crashing through the blockade. The wrecked cars hadn't fully blocked the lane I squeezed through, though the truck's front end got scraped. In the rearview mirror, the officers were gone. But then the truck suddenly lurched downward. Something had climbed aboard. Suddenly, I remembered how Kyle had grabbed my hand and said, "Bro, someone stole my Buddha head." They took it. His wife also told me the front of his truck had been badly scraped, just like what I'd just experienced. "Adam, what the hell just happened? Those traffic cops, were they fake?" Carlos's voice was almost in tears. Cole's pupils had dilated. "Adam, I think there's something behind the truck." I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the red cloth covering the statue fluttering violently. As the cloth fell, I saw an old rusted truck trailing close behind us. Its headlights were flickering, and in the unstable light I could just make out a Buddha head on its flatbed. When transporting a Buddha, the head must be covered in red cloth and must face forward toward the cab. But the Buddha head on that truck wasn't covered, and it was facing backward. In the dark night, it looked like a human head flying in reverse. "Damn it!" I cursed under my breath. My foot was nearly flooring the gas pedal, but the truck was slowing down as if something heavy was pressing in from all directions. "Adam, what do we do?" Carlos and Cole could both feel the truck slowing. The rustling and whispering sounds from the rear cabin grew louder and louder. "Cole, get up here. Carlos, grab the 7-colored rice. Light the incense and stick it in the bowl," I ordered. "On it." Cole scrambled into the front seat, and I had him help hold the wheel steady. I rolled down the window and cracked the soul whip outside. The loud cracks echoed far into the air. The truck immediately picked up speed, but that heavy, dragging sensation didn't go away entirely. "Adam," Carlos wailed from the back seat, on the verge of tears. "The incense won't light." "Give it to me." I took the wheel back from Cole as he grabbed the incense from Carlos. He muttered under his breath while clicking the lighter repeatedly. This time, the incense lit successfully. Carlos hurriedly passed the bowl of 7-colored rice over. But as soon as Cole stuck the 3 incense sticks in, they all snapped cleanly in half at the middle. Cole's face went ghostly pale. "Let me try," I said. I had Cole take the wheel again and place the incense bowl in front of the driver's seat. As soon as I lit a new set of 3 sticks, smoke swirled around me, and in the haze I saw a dark, disembodied human head appear out of thin air and blow directly onto the incense. Fury surged in me. I gripped the 3 incense sticks backward and stabbed them into the hollow eye sockets of that head. Carlos and Cole probably couldn't see it, only saw me suddenly grab the incense and stab at empty air. Then, the incense crumbled to ash and scattered in midair. "Adam, what are you doing?" Cole shouted in fear. "I'm fine," I said, brushing ash off my hands. "Hand me 3 more. This time, I got them lit and placed without issue." but they burned down incredibly fast. I told Cole and Carlos to keep watch when the incense finished. They were to immediately replace them. Then the truck slowed again. I checked the rearview mirror. With each batch of incense burned, the Buddha head on the trailing truck turned slightly more toward us. The 7 colored rice and incense were used in past Buddha transports for spiritual protection in unusual situations. But this time, the statue we were delivering wasn't whole. Outside the window, everything had gone gray and blurry. The truck was barely moving. I rolled down the window again, but just as I tried to raise the soul whip, I found my arm couldn't move. Under the dim glow of the yellow silk lantern, I saw countless tiny black hands gripping my arm. "Adam! The incense burned out!" Cole's voice cracked from fear. We had brought plenty of incense, but his shaking hands had broken too many. At this point, the Buddha head on the truck behind us was nearly fully turned and we weren't far from the temple. Time to risk it all. I bit down hard on the tip of my tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. Instantly, my arm could move again. I snatched the incense bowl from Cole and flung it out the window. The 7 colored rice and ash swirled into a miniature cyclone on the dark road. The truck suddenly felt lighter, and I gunned it forward. The old truck chasing us hadn't completely fallen behind it, caught up again quickly. Our wheels, spinning at full speed, suddenly dragged as if stuck in tar. From the road came a dry, scraping noise. And for a moment, I saw those blue uniformed workers again. They were standing by the road, waving at us. My steering wheel suddenly lost control. The truck swerved toward the roadside barrier. I gripped the wheel tight, but couldn't steer. Cole buried his head in his hands, screaming, "It's over, Adam!" But then, a deep, resonant bell tolled from the nearby mountain. The morning temple bell. It wasn't even dawn yet, but the bell rang out. Just before we hit the barrier, I wrenched the steering wheel hard. The truck swung around with a screech that echoed through the mountains. We came to a stop. The bell continued, loud and unwavering, sweeping across the highway like a cleansing wave. When we finally gathered our wits, the sky had begun to brighten. I jumped out of the truck. Aside from the obvious skid marks, there was nothing else on the road. The Buddha body still sat upright in the bed, red cloth perfectly in place. At 6 a.m, we delivered it to the temple, bathed in the early light. The guest master and Abbot Huiming received us. Once the statue was placed in the hall, I asked the abbot about the early bell. He told me the head monk had ordered it an hour early today because he heard the driver who brought the Buddha head had fallen ill, and the temple was ringing the bell in prayer for his recovery. I thanked the monks on Kyle's behalf and offered incense. As we were about to leave, I hesitated and asked Huiming, gently, if there had been any issue with the delivered Buddha head. I explained we'd burned incense for Kyle during the journey, but couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't been enough. I still remembered how, in the end, the head on that truck hadn't quite finished turning. Huiming smiled and said, "Your compassion speaks for itself. The incense lives in your heart. How could it not be enough?" On the way back, Kyle's wife called. She said Kyle's fever had finally broken. He was awake, though he couldn't remember anything about delivering the Buddha head. He just said that during his delirium, he kept smelling temple incense. On the return trip, Cole was completely wiped out, but Carlos was full of energy. He thoroughly inspected the back of the truck, making sure it was completely empty before we hit the road. The ride was smooth. Carlos didn't even need me to take over. He drove steady the whole way. But just before we reached home, as I leaned against the passenger window, I saw a familiar figure standing by the guardrail. It looked like Larry.